Stage and these gigantic TVs that I don't have one or can't afford. They're awesome. Today we're here to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Bond franchise. It's an MGM franchise that has stood the test of time. And all Bond films this year will be available on Blu-ray for the very first time. Last year we did a panel like this with directors, and we had Baz Luhrmann, Michael Mann, and Oliver Stone. And the objective was to show how technology and content are intertwined today. And if you're a director, I think the most important thing is that you invest, a major part of your life in creating a film, and details matter. They matter, from the sound quality and the picture quality and the details of the language and the costumes and the sets and the scenery. So it's a great honor to be here and introduce three fantastic directors that between them have directed 8 Bond films. John Glenn, Martin Campbell, and Michael Apted. So with that, I'd like to turn it over and show you a quick trailer of the work.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
Hello everyone, and welcome to CS 2012. My name is Olga Krylenko. Some of you might recognize me from Quantum of Solace, released in 2008. And my name is Katerina Morino. Maybe you recognize me from Casino Royale. Olga and I, thank you, and good afternoon. Olga and I are very happy to be here in Las Vegas as representatives of a very exclusive club, a former Bond Girls. As many of you know, this year James Bond celebrates his incredible 50th anniversary on film with his golden anniversary. From the seriously handsome Sean Connery to the dashing Daniel Craig, 6 different actors have taken on the iconic role of 007 since Dr. No that came out in 1962.
I'm glad they know how to memorize it.
Now, it is our pleasure to announce that the world's most successful secret agent will be the most world's best home entertainment experience this fall. So the Bond 50 Blu-ray collection is available for pre-sale now at participating online retailers everywhere. The collection features more than 130 hours of bonus material, including some new and exclusive content, all in one very sleek and sexy collectible package. To celebrate the arrival of Bond on Blu-ray, we have a few very special guests that can elaborate on their own personal experiences working with 007. We have assembled a panel of acclaimed Bond directors to share some of their favorite memories as they help to shape the celebrated film franchise. And to moderate this panel, we have brought with us a true Bond fan. Chris Carl is the current entertainment editorial director and editor-in-chief at IGN.com. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chris Carl.
Thank you. So I guess they get rid of the Bond girls and bring up this guy. Anyway, so to help showcase some of the most amazing moments you can expect from this Blu-ray set, I'd like to welcome to the stage legendary Bond directors John Glenn, Michael Apted, and Martin Campbell. Never sat in one of these. I assume you all have. So each of you joined the Bond franchise at a different point in time. What was it like for you each to take the reins as filmmaker and bring to life one of the most celebrated and renowned characters of all time? Let's start with John.
It's probably a lot easier for me in a sense because I was editor and second unit director on 3 previous films. On the Majesty Secret Service, The Spy Who Loved Me, and Moonraker. So I was kind of eased into I knew the Bond, what Bond represented very well. They are a formula type of film. And Cubby Broccoli, who's not with us anymore unfortunately, but was a wonderful producer. He used to look at the script and he'd say, "Where are the bumps? I'm missing the bumps." That was his favourite term. And he had an uncanny knack of knowing when the film needed a bit of a fill-up. So, I mean, I suppose I was fortunate that Roger Moore continued the role when I did my first film, For Your Eyes Only. And I was lucky because I think I've done about 7 or 8 other films with Roger as an editor and a second unit director. And he'd look at me and say, "Am I in your contract or are you in mine?" So we had a very good relationship, and that helped. I had my own idea of what I wanted to do with the series when I took over, and we all tried to get back to the Fleming style and make him a much harder edge character. I think Sean Connery kind of nailed the part eventually, and he grew into the part, and I think Roger grew into the part as well. And I think if you ask anyone who their favourite Bond is, they'll give you 5 or 6 different answers.
Awesome, thank you. Michael?
Well, for me it was as scary as hell. I mean, when they approached me and asked what I was interested in, I thought it was a joke, because I'd never done anything remotely like it. And I tried to figure out why they wanted me, and once I figured out that I did have something to offer to them, then I became more comfortable with it. But even so, my experience was more in sort of documentary work and very realistic stuff, and I was aware of the huge audience out there that had all these expectations, and I was just petrified would I be able to deliver them. Because it's exciting to know there's a lot of people waiting for your film, but there's also a lot of people out there waiting to tear it apart if you mess it up. So it was a pretty scary moment for me.
But it all turned out well.
Yeah, so we pulled it off, yeah.
Awesome. Martin?
Well, of course, I followed John Glenn. In fact, I did Goldeneye with Pierce Brosnan. So John was a hard act to follow. So like Michael, of course, you're in fear and trepidation. You're going to let everybody down, and then you can actually step up to the plate and deliver what the audience expects you to do. And of course, in New Bond, well, you hope that they like the character playing Bond. In this case, they did like Pierce, thank God. So that was fine. And it's just that frightening thing of actually feeling that you have to deliver this thing and that no one will be disappointed.
Right, so we have a bunch of awesome clips to show, so I want to get right to it. First up, a memorable scene from John Glenn's Octopussy. Roll the clip, please.
Feather up, please.
So when you read the script for a sequence like that for the first time, what is going through your head?
Actually, it wasn't in the script. I mean, if you look at the movie, you see it has absolutely nothing to do with the movie whatsoever. And it was a continuation of a thing that I probably started, of actually having almost like a second feature that preceded the main film, just to give the audience an appetite, to whet their appetite, and get them in the mood for a James Bond film. And it's a tradition that we kept up to the present time.
And I think very successfully. How did you pull off the barnstorming sequence? It looked, was there a lot of stunt flying, or was it? How'd you piece it together?
Well, there's the best shot of all is a foreground miniature, which is a very old technology where you put up a small hangar door in the foreground, say 5 feet away from the camera, and then you match it light-wise perfectly with the background, which is 100 yards away. And then you put all the action of the guys trying to close the door in on the left-hand side. And then you stick a guy with a gun in the foreground on the right-hand side. And then you run the aeroplane on 2 wires through the shot, and it appears to go through the door, the ever-narrowing gap, which is absolutely fantastic. There's no other way you could do it.
Yeah, I was thinking you were seriously putting someone's life at risk there.
We would have done if we'd tried to use a real plane, I can assure you. Corky Thornoff, who was the pilot, he demonstrated to us he could fly an aeroplane through a hangar. So when I saw a piece of film where he shot this, I looked at him and I said, I think that's the most boring shot I've ever seen, because there was no drama in the shot. It was just a flash as this plane went through this hangar. And I said, can you do that with people in the shot, people running around? Because you have to have that to give you scale. It's very important to have a person in the shot to give you scale. And also you need the drama. And he showed me this shot, and that's what gave birth to the idea of the closing doors. And it worked in the end. It worked better than I could ever imagine.
Awesome, thank you. Next up, let's look at one of the most iconic scenes in Bond history, the ski sequence from The Spy Who Loved Me. Please roll the clip. So, I'm pretty sure that wasn't CG.
No, you're absolutely right. This was in the age before we had that luxury. I don't think it would have been quite as good if it had been CG. I think people were sophisticated enough to know when it's a fake, and that's for real. Rick Sylvester, who was the stuntman who did the jump, and he was the last person you'd ever believe could play James Bond. He was about 5'6", bespectacled, very studious type, very modest, and I soon discovered that he had a heart of steel, because he was fantastic and had such nerve. He came back on top of the mountain having achieved the jump, and he rushed into a corner away from everyone, and he pulled down his ski pants and he dumped in the snow. His stomach was jelly.
Awesome. When you're working on a sequence like that, do you have any sense in that moment that you're creating history?
I don't know. It was. I suppose I was lucky in a way that this was June before a single frame had been shot on The Spy Who Loved Me, and they really sent me out to do this shot to keep me busy. Cubby Broccoli and Lewis Gilbert, I'd worked with them before, and they were trying to find something for me to do, I think, and they came up with this idea, and the idea was if the shot failed, which had a very good likelihood of failing, then they would have scrubbed the whole idea of the sequence, and we would never have seen that sequence.
Well, thankfully it didn't fail. What for you was the hardest part about bringing this to life?
It was definitely the jump, because it was shot on a mountain called Mount Asgard, which is on the Arctic Circle. And the weather there is atrocious, I cannot tell you. And, we sat around, we even camped at the bottom of the mountain to try and be ready if we got a clear break. And I even got stranded up there with Rick Sylvester one day, and we had to be rescued. Bill Henderson, the helicopter pilot, he tied a big piece of, like a fishing rod on the front of his helicopter, and he scraped it along the precipice, because it was so misty, and kept watching that, and he came up the top and he rescued us. Otherwise, I think we'd have been up there now.
just another day on set, I guess. Now, switching gears, we'd like to show you an amazing clip from the Michael Apted film, The World Is Not Enough. Let's watch the clip. So, you get to go to a job where one of the elements of your job is getting to saw a car in half.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the fun bits of it, because there'd been sort of discussions, as it were, between which company should provide the car, the Aston Martin and all this, and I got a chance to rip up a Bond car.
And that doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't, no.
This film, particularly this Azerbaijan sequence, it had to be the biggest technical challenge of your career to that point. to that point, as more of a, pegged as an actor's director, how did you make the transition to big budget like action movie making?
Well, you had to do a lot of listening. I mean, I made sure that when I went on, I had the best people around me, people who'd done this sort of stuff, the second unit director, the stunt coordinator, the first AD, so I was surrounded by very good people. I brought some of my own in, the cameraman and the editor and whatever, but I listened to advice, and there was a long preparation for a scene like this, and I thought, I'm not shooting this for months and months and months, but a little voice inside me said, pay attention, Michael, pay attention. And sure enough, I did pay attention, because although I shot that scene months after we'd started preparing it, it was ready to go, because the people I was talking to were going to spend all those months doing nothing but building that set. So, the good Lord was on my side in that way. He gave me good advice.
What is your most vivid memory of that sequence from the shooting perspective?
Well, I think not the shooting of it, but finding it in a way. I mean, it's sort of a real story about getting gas out of the Caspian and the political ramifications of it, which are still going on and going to loom even larger. And we found some pictures of this city that the Russians had built in the Caspian. And we went down to see it and to photograph it, and it just gave us the inspiration from how the thing should look, how it should be set, rather than having it come out of some wild imaginative idea. It was just wonderful to see a real place, this incredible sight of all these roads and whatever, hotels in the middle of the sea, all of which had become derelict because the Russians had pulled out. But there was a little bit of reality in it, a little bit of history in it, and that for me was very comforting.
This sequence in particular combines pretty much all the Bond elements where we've come to expect cars, Bond girls off the top, gadgets, everything. How important was it to you to get all those elements worked into this film?
Well, it was crucial. I mean, I just knew certain things had to be delivered, and the audience, the world audience of Bond, which would be much bigger than an audience I'd ever met before, would be demanding these things, everything you described, the girls, the one-liners, the action and all that, and I knew I had to deliver it, and was I up to it was the question, and was I being given enough good stuff to deliver it? But I was very, very much aware that of the height of the expectation and for these particular moments, and I think if you're directing a Bond, you ignore those things at your peril.
So each new Bond actor brings his own bag of tricks to the proceedings. What unique qualities do you think Pierce Brosnan brought, and how did you help him kind of cultivate that?
Well, he helped me, but I thought what was terrific about it is the arsenal that he's got. He's a funny guy, he's a funny actor, he's a tough guy, he's a romantic guy, and I think it allows the film to go through its different gears in a sense. You can put a funny scene with a sexy scene with a violent scene, and he can, in a sense, bind them all together, and I think that's a pretty rare gift in an actor, and I thought that was the most precious thing that Pierce had.
Awesome, thank you, Michael. Now we'd like to close out the clips by bringing you the intense parkour sequence from Martin Campbell's Casino Royale. Please roll the clip. Yes, indeed. So this, film sets up a bold new Bond, and the action in this clip kind of sets the stage for what you're going to come to expect from this version of Bond. What did you do with this scene in particular to help establish that new identity?
Well, first of all, it's not really the Bond that we all know and love. I mean, it's almost a prequel in those terms, and it's based on the book, so that makes a big difference. Tonally, it had to be more like the book. The thing was to bring it back to a slightly more real concept of Bond, very much based on the tone of the books. And so the idea with this particular sequence was to show Bond as certainly as a rough diamond. And he also makes mistakes in the sequence, but above all, there's no real technology in the sequence. It's simply one guy chasing another guy, And the idea for the parkour sequence, or free running as they call it in England, came from the original writers. I think it was like a 5-line kind of. They always, as these boys know, it was always director to be saw down as basically what they write in the script. But he happened to be the guy that invented Seb, Sebastian Footwear, and he was utterly fantastic. He did a lot of that stuff himself. All that running up buildings was all of him. But the idea was there's only a gun involved. There's no technology. There's no gadgets. There's no kind of. It's just basic. One guy went, and of course Bond, the bad guy, is obviously very skillful at being able to do what he does. And Bond is rather clumsy. I mean, he's thinking with his heart, not his head. So he's just by sheer guts and endurance, he's following this guy almost pathologically. He's determined to actually run him down. And then, if you think about it, he follows the guy into the embassy. And actually, if he just waited outside for half a day, maybe the guy would have come out. But he breaks every rule in the book by going in and causing chaos. And ultimately, in the story, if you've seen the film, of course, it gets him into a lot of trouble. So really, it was a sequence that set Bond up as having all the kind of raw elements of what makes him great, but as yet not. He doesn't use his abilities. He hasn't honed his abilities at this point in the story. And throughout the movie, of course, ultimately at the end of the movie, he says the name's Bond, James Bond. Well, that's sort of where he slots into the Bonds that the three of us have done previously.
So when you're approaching a sequence like this, walk us through kind of how you have to set something like this up, because it seems like, as a moviegoer, that's the sort of magic that I can't even imagine, making happen.
Well, the first thing is that even though none of this was ever written, it's like all of us kind of work out our sequences sort of pretty much ourselves, I think, and along with this stunt coordinator and whoever else is, as Michael said, you have a very good crew behind you, a very good second unit director. But my first instinct to look at those trains was, well, they have to get to the top of the crane. They have to get up there. There's no other way. I mean, how can you not get 200 feet up on those? So that was the first objective, to get up there. And then you have the problems if you want to get them up there fast. So there's all that nonsense where he kicks off the load of pipes and things. Of course, that doesn't exist, and he whirls up to. So you have all these things of keeping the whole thing going and keeping the energy going, and so that it doesn't flag. So, but basically to keep the scene very real. It's real, of course it's not real, but it's to keep it a sense of reality and toughness to it, and not rely on the gadgets and technology and everything else. Keep it very raw, is the idea.
So obviously, since you're going in a slightly different direction with Bond, the casting process was, well documented. What was your first reaction when you saw Daniel Craig portraying the role?
Well, when I saw him portraying the role,
well, when you saw him, when you saw him for the first time as Bond.
As Bond, I thought he was absolutely terrific. I mean, he wasn't the conventional Bond in the sense that we had all done movies where it was much more in keeping with how people perceive Bond. Both Barbara and Michael wanted it grittier and tougher. I wanted it that way. We wanted to get very much the tone of the book, so it was a flawed character. Of course, once he started working, once Daniel really embraced it and went for it, you could see it in the dailies from the first day.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank all three of you guys for coming up here today, and welcome back Olga and Katerina for one last announcement. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Hello again. Don't move. Good. For the first time I can direct him. Great. Anyway, thanks Chris. We are delighted to unveil a specially designed poster to celebrate 50 years of the franchise here today at CESA. anniversary, we look forward to sharing further announcements throughout the coming months. Good afternoon, everyone, and we hope you have a great time in Vegas.
Thank you.